the participants, inshallah.
Okay.
So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I
Walaikum
welcome
salam wa
everyone to
rahmatullah.
this important lecture. Yes, I welcome everyone to this important lecture, which is on the critical tools for thinking. So, inshallah, I know we are going to benefit immensely from this. But before we start, I would like to read the short biography of our guest speaker in a, in a summarized way, so that we will know what we will be expecting in the lecture and how important it is to our life. So I will start by reading. The guest speaker is by name Sheikh Muhammad Nuruddin Lemu. Right from his teenage years, Nuruddin Lemu came to the realization that his calling in life is to address some of the challenges that face our society. Thus, he set himself the task of building institutions and strengthening capacities for knowledge generation, sharing, and management. Nuruddin, in his capacity as a trustee and member of the senior management board of Islamic Education Trust and director for research and training at the Dawah Institute of Nigeria, oversees research coordination and authorship of numerous published works, including books, articles, training manuals, and internet content. He focuses primarily on countering religious extremism and radicalization, as well as promoting intra-faith and interfaith understanding. His team developed faith-based critical thinking tools from Islamic jurisprudence, which is the topic for today, and legal theory, Sharia intelligence, and alternative counter-argument and narrative to those bridge-burning religious extremists, which are used in various training courses of the Dawah Institute. The Train the Trainers course in Islam and Dialogue is a flagship interfaith and intrafaith dialogue capacity building program for peaceful coexistence designed by the Dawah Institute of Nigeria. And through this program, the Institute has reached over 65,000 people from diverse religious organizations in Nigeria and other African countries, as well as some parts of Europe and Asia, including Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Malaysia. The training resources of this courses covers issues related to women's rights, gender equity, interfaith relations, Sharia and Islamic law, jihad and concept of peace, violent and non-violent extremism, the Islamic protocols of dissent and conflict transformation, religious minorities' right and democracy, comparative religion, and the principles and objectives of Islamic jurisprudence. He partnered with and facilitated or made numerous presentations to organizations in Nigeria and abroad. And in order to create the critical capacity required to counter religious extremism, break down stereotypes and bigotry, which have given rise to religious intolerance in Nigeria. Nuruddin served on the board of several institutions to help in contributing to their strategic direction and focus. Some of these institutions included the Direct Lotus Capital, Halal Investment, Direct Development Initiative for West Africa, and so many numerous organizations. He was a member of the governing board for National Issues Forum in Abuja. He is also the advisor board for youth-led initiative in preventing violent extremism. Nuruddin has dedicated part of his schedule to working with young people to develop the physical and intellectual capacity necessary for dynamic leadership. To this end, he has worked in several capacities to support young people as follows: founder, member, Regional Center for Expertise in MENA, member, Watching the Vote, working with working group for 2019 presidential election, youth initiative advocacy and advancement, and so many other organizations. Nuruddin work with network of Islamic faith-based coalition, non-governmental organization that has over 1,000 members. He also partners Luxury Leadership Foundation, which is also a network of Christian faith-based coalition. His most recent foray is as a co-convener of interfaith activity and partnership for peace. Nuruddin has engaged in interfaith bridge building dialogues in various countries with people of various faiths, including Christian, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus. He is an international speaker who has handled various teams, including youth empowerment, education, personal development, leadership, economic empowerment, resource management, human ecology and environment, sustainable development, gender equity, ethics, social justice, family, poverty alleviation, religion, extremism, interfaith relations. He has talks and advised and worked with numerous international organizations, think tanks, and agencies on issues related to religious extremism, interfaith relations, and issues of national concern to Nigeria and the whole West African region. And fortunate enough, this is a group of UPM students of Africans. So I think the guest speaker is in the right place. And to sum it up, he has he has obtained his MSc in Resource Management from University Edinburgh, Scotland, and BA Agriculture from University of Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. And he is a very fluent speaker of English, Hausa, Arabic, and Nubi. His favorite pastimes are reading, tree planting, spending time outdoors, fishing with his families and friends. With this short autobiography, I will welcome the Sheikh and call on Dr. Raji to give his own opening remarks, inshallah, so that we can start, inshallah. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على من تلقى القرآن من لدن حكيم عليم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Respected brothers and sisters and virtually elders in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah for having our brother and Sheikh in our midst, whom I have known for quite a very long time now, for over 3 decades. And since then, I have the passion of actually having a person like him in my life, because I've seen so much skills and so many other talents within our brother and Sheikh Nuruddeen Lemu. And Alhamdulillah, today is going to talk to us in terms of skills and how to acquire them, how to mold and shape our reasoning in terms of Islamic skills. We pray may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to pick those good things that is going to come out of this presentation, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect him and give him the strength to deliver this particular presentation, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we call on Sheikh تفضل بسم الله, you can start the lecture inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Firstly, thank you very much for this opportunity. I feel very humbled, honored to be with you, especially as you are a group of intellectuals and coming from various sciences. And we'll come back to this subject of the sciences when we look at those scholars of Islam who study the ayat of creation, the ayat not necessarily of revelation or what we call the religious, the Quranic and the Sunnah sciences, but as Allah asks us to study his ayat not just in wahi, but the ayat, that is wafi anfusikum wafil afaq, the siru fil arj, that the Quran encourages us to study these other ayat that Allah and the Prophet ﷺ make as part of the obligation on every Muslim. When he says, the Prophet said, whoever treads on the path, man salaka tariqan yabtaki fihi ilman sahalallahu lahu tariqan ila al-jannah, that whoever treads on the path in the search for knowledge, Allah makes easy for that person the path to paradise. This was a statement made in Medina during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And you don't travel from Medina in search of religious knowledge somewhere, religion in the narrow sense. If you wanted to study that, definitely you would stay in Medina to learn it from the Prophet ﷺ, where the wahi was coming. And so we find when we meet people of various fields in the various sciences, these are the other ayat that the Quran and Sunnah require of us. And these are fields of expertise that are as important as the scholars who are studying the deen. And so you will find scholars like Imam Shafi and a couple of others describing doctors or physicians, as they were called, as the study of medicine is as important as the study of fiqh and lawmaking when it comes to saving lives and achieving the higher intent and objectives of Sharia. But we will come to that, inshallah, very soon. But definitely an honor to be with you all. The topic we will be looking at is critical thinking tools for Muslims. When we look at critical thinking tools, we're here looking at principles to improve our cognitive skills, our thinking skills, to help us navigate better life's decisions and to navigate better the assessment of ideas, the assessment of values, to navigate Islamic teachings also as we live our lives in trying to contribute better as we grow as Muslims and as human beings. The reason why it is important to be able to have these principles is so that we don't, I don't use the word we don't think too much, but let us build on thinking that has already been done. In mathematics, why do we teach people equations? So that they don't have to get to the headache of deriving equations every time. So when we say pi r square is the area of a circle and half base times height is the area of a triangle, or another formula for something, we pick on these formula because these formula guide us. When you say people must respect BODMAS when it comes to mathematical equations, that you should do things in brackets first and then do things in the order of something, and then you divide before you multiply, and then you multiply before you add, and you add before you subtract. That orderly method, many of us have forgotten, why do we have that order? Why can't it be the other way around? Why does it have to be in that order? These are very useful critical thinking tools in approaching maths. When you want to cross the road, there are certain tools. They are like maxims, statements, packages of profound wisdom that have been summarized in a statement that may be as simple as look right, look left, and look right again. It sounds very simple, straightforward. Of course, if you are in Nigeria, you would look right, look left, look right again, and look left again. Some of our drivers are not the most. There's always somebody wanting to drive in the wrong direction. However, on a more serious note, the assessment of ideas that come our way are very critical. And part of the reason is probably because ideas seem to be the seeds of the trees that we see. Ideas seem to be the most basic unit of creation coming into the world. The ideas of today bring the realities of tomorrow. And what we see in our lives, when you see yourself studying in Malaysia or in any other country, at one in Malaysia, but you had an idea that you would like to study in Malaysia. That idea was managed properly and managed in a particular way. And it has grown into the tree, into the reality of you being in Malaysia, or you being an engineer, or you having a PhD, or you somebody else actually not being able to do well. Somebody is in prison because of how they managed ideas. Somebody gave them an idea to cheat in business, to steal, to be corrupt. They acted on that idea, and now they are where they are. And so it is important that we look at the kind of ideas that come to us as human beings as opportunities that we should harness. Now, once you have, for a person who is an architect, once you have constructed a building and you have a big house in the middle of town, a big tower, look at KLCC or any of these major constructions.
Sorry, did we lose the Sheikh? Because I cannot hear him.
Yes, I think we just lost him. I just pray it's not electricity or internet.
Inshallah, he will join us soon. He will join back, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. Oh yeah, salam. We're enjoying it. And please,
Absolutely.
before the sheikh comes back, please no screenshots. We beg you, please. We are pleading with you. No screenshots. No clicking on the record button, except that me. So as you can see, we are just giving a summary. Somewhere. Okay, I think Sheikh has. Oh, I thought he's entered. Dr.
Maybe
Abraham?
network.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
He has joined. He has joined.
He has joined. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. Thank Allah. Alhamdulillah.
Apologies, please.
You're welcome back, Sheikh.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if we look at a building that has been constructed and somebody says, go and bring out that building, go and destroy that building, that park, that house, that car. Once it has been constructed, it's very difficult to destroy. When somebody has become addicted to drugs or even to smoking, it's difficult to get them off that addiction. However, when the idea of building a structure or a facility or a piece of technology or the idea of trying a drug was presented, it was easier to manage. Somebody could have easily destroyed the idea of building KLCC. Somebody just needed to discuss with the architect, change the design, give the person another idea. It is, ideas are so fragile that if we don't handle them with care, we can seriously undermine a better future. And if we handle ideas with care, we can enhance the future. And so this issue of critically thinking about issues is a very fundamental part of our deen. When it comes to critical thinking, the Quran assumes that its message is لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, that its message is for people who will think, لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, for people who use their reasoning. We find that our Creator, Allah, has given us this gift of reasoning and expects us to use curiosity, to satisfy our reasoning that's guided by our conscience. In other words, not asking useless questions, but seeking for ilman nafi'an, seeking for useful knowledge. Allah asks us, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask those who know, if you don't know. Allah is so magnanimous that though He is the creator of the universe and our creator and the revealer of messages to humanity through people we call prophets and messengers, but Allah is also so accommodating that He answers many questions that come from very irrational thinking. And so when you look through the Quran at the kind of questions that the Jahiliyyah people were asking the Prophet, waqalu this and that, waqalu that and that, and they are asking, why doesn't Allah send us angels instead of a person? Why this? Why that? And Allah would reply, Qul this, answer them this. And you find we've got, according to some who have counted, up to 332 repetitions of waqalu, this and that. They say this, they say that. In other words, if you look at the Quran, the way, the normal mushaf that we use in our recitations, and you say it's about 600 pages, or some would say up to 400, but even if you take one that has up to 600 pages, with up to 332 waqalu, it means nearly half of the pages of the Quran contain questions being asked. But what's interesting, we have about 300, actually, according to some, exactly 332 responses, quls, in the Quran. So not just is Allah ready to answer our questions, but He asks us, don't we think? أَفَلَا يَتَدَّبَّرُونَ Quran? Don't we contemplate that the gift of reasoning is a gift that is supposed to help us appreciate the message of the Quran better? It's interesting when it comes to questions that Allah didn't look down upon the sincere questions that even Jahiliyyah people were asking. And asking questions was not viewed as a sign of faithlessness. And so we find Ibrahim alayhi salam being critical on identifying who's the creator of the universe, of the sun and the moon and the this and the that. But it's not just that Ibrahim was being logical in concluding that Allah was the creator of everything, but the fact that Allah will share that type of logical argument with us and share that with humanity. It didn't stop there. We find other prophets, from Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam asking questions, Isa, all these great prophets, a prophet asking, how do you bring the dead back to life? Dead bones, dead. How, asking Allah. And Allah performs a miracle. We get creatures that Allah has created that are as pure and as innocent as angels. And yet we find Allah informing angels of His plans to create man on earth. Inni ja'ilun fil ard khalifa. I'm putting on earth a vicegerent. And it seems from the questions that the angels are asking, they seem to know something about human beings, even though Allah has not yet created Adam. But they ask Allah a question that's very interesting, because the angels seem not to think that Allah's idea was a good idea. That when Allah says, I'm going to create man on earth, the angels felt that's not really a very good idea. They are asking Allah, why would you put on earth someone who would shed blood and cause so much corruption, أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيُفْسِقُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ. Why would you put somebody who would be so destructive? When we as angels, we glorify you. We are good human beings. Why would you create human beings? And the question is not about how the Quran answers that question as you continue reading, but the fact that the Almighty Creator of the universe and the All-Knowing would create angels and give them the space to ask questions, that the reasoning that He gave angels, that Allah expects the angels to ask, to satisfy their curiosity. And what I want to emphasize here is the fact that Allah repeated that episode of Himself and the angels in the Quran. That Allah wanted us to know how open He is to questioning that comes out of sincerity. That innama al-a'mal binniyat, that actions are judged by their intentions. The angels were sincere in wanting to know. And Allah gave them an answer. In fact, a number of answers as we go through the Quran, where Allah explains more about humanity. That yes, humanity does have that tendency, as the angels mentioned, to be destructive and shed blood. But not all of humanity are like that. And not most of humanity are like that. And that humanity also has the capacity to do so much good, to be very cooperative, to be protective. That humanity is being given a significant amount of power, that we are actually a force of nature. We can cause global warming, as we've seen, but we can also reverse it. We can get to the moon and most likely beyond. But the point I want to underscore here is that Allah expects us as human beings to use our reasoning, and as pure as the angels are, even angels asked questions. Prophets asked questions. And so should we. And if something is not clear, if something doesn't make sense, please don't live with it. The compulsion Allah puts through the words of the Prophet ﷺ, through the Quran, of travel the earth, move out to search for knowledge, that the talab al-ilm, the search for knowledge, is an obligation on us. Obligation. What is problematic is if you have questions and you don't ask. Because if it says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, if there's something useful that you want to know and you don't ask, it is faith-shaking, it is confusing, and you don't ask, the fault is not asking. I'd like to share with you a few specific critical thinking tools. And I'll raise this as just quick points, quick principles that I would expect probably during Q&A, we might have more time to discuss their application. I'll start very quickly by first putting, just getting off the table this issue of the role of reason when it comes to revelation. The role of reasoning in Islam. And we find in the Islamic sciences, reasoning is what scholars use to determine the authenticity of hadith. It's not about faith. It's not, this hadith is very nice, it sounds beautiful, it must have come from the Prophet. It is the kind of, no, the scholars want to be sure that there was a clear chain of narrators that reasonably convince any sensible person that this person historically spoke to this person and passed the hadith on. The scholars want to be sure about the integrity of the individuals in the chain of narrators. They want to be sure that the content of the hadith is in synchrony, is in line with the message of the Quran and the message of other more authentic hadith. So we find reasoning playing a role in the field of ulum al-hadith and ulum al-Quran. We find reasoning playing a very critical role in the sharh, the meaning, the understanding of the language, the grammar. of the Quran, of the Hadith, we find reasoning playing a critical role in usul al-fiqh, in the sciences of law or jurisprudence, especially when it comes to looking at qiyas as a reasoning by analogy tool where scholars look for the illah or the hikmah of an Islamic ruling and apply it to new cases. We find reasoning operating when it comes to maslaha, concern for public interest. We see reasoning concerned in istihsan, equity, and concern for the maqasid of Sharia. We see reasoning playing a role in saddu zariya. Saddu zariya means blocking the means. These are preclusionary principles of consequentialist thinking, where scholars are looking at not just what you are doing, is it right or wrong, but what is the consequence? Even if what you are doing is good, but the consequence may be bad, then they will block it, and they call that saddu zariya. So even if we look at a lot of laws, for example, environmental laws, traffic rules, a lot of these are maslaha, are saddu zariya laws, where because of avoiding accidents, even though the Quran and the Sunnah did not say you must stop at a red light, we accept that so as to prevent accidents, so as to save lives, which is a value of hifdhun nafs and protection of life, that we should respect those man-made laws. But they are man-made but divinely inspired and supported by the practices of the Prophet ﷺ and those of the Sahaba. When we look at the relationship between reason and revelation, what we see is, as Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali said, that reasoning is like the eyes. Revelation is like light. To say you are going to use your reasoning without the guidance of revelation is like moving around with your eyes open, but in the dark. You can't see. And to say you are going to use revelation without reasoning is like moving around in daylight. There's a lot of light, but you are blind. Your eyes are closed. It's easy for you to get lost. Both reasoning and revelation are gifts from Allah that are expected to work together in guiding us through this life. But as we said earlier, we also have the lessons that Allah has put within creation, within history, and many verses in the Quran asking us to study, to travel the earth and see how, what happened to nations that came before. Verses in the Quran asking us to travel and study how Allah created things, how did Allah originate things? Allah says, Siru fil ard, fanzur kayfa bada Allahul khalq. Travel the earth and study how Allah brought things into being, brought his creation into being. And we study the laws of nature and the laws of physics and the laws of history and economics. And we study various societies in anthropology and sociology. We study how seeds grow in biology and agriculture. We study the weather and the climate. And we are able to understand this world better and be better khulafa, better vicegerents, better representatives of Allah, that we ensure that the mizan, the balance that Allah has created in creation, what some refer to as the ecological balance, is something we are able to control. It's something we are able to ensure we keep that balance. At one time we have chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs going into the atmosphere. We realized the damage it was doing. We studied what was going on in the ozone layer, and we have started to look at policies to change that. We're also seeing what's happening in global warming, and various protocols and environmental laws and treaties are being carried to protect climate, to protect the seas, to protect space. Because many are dumping a lot of space. The old satellites are cluttering. There's a lot of pollution going into space, not just in the seas, etc., and on land, etc. And so in these lessons we have in creation, just as with revelation, there are some things that are described as qat'iyah, We are certain the Quran says there is one God. We are certain about it. We are certain about the hereafter. It is repeated again and again in many ways in the Quran, in many hadith. There is no doubt. We are certain we are to pray 5 times a day and fast in Ramadan. We are certain that alcohol is haram and zina is haram. We are certain that we should be forgiving and exercise sabr and show rahmah. There are so many areas in Aqidah, in our creed and beliefs, in our rituals and prayers and acts of worship, in our ahlak and behavior, in our mu'amalat and interpersonal transactions that we are certain about. And these things form the core and kernel of the deen, what scholars refer to as ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura. Those essential ingredients that make you a Muslim. That accepting these fundamental teachings that come from the Quran and that come from mutawatir hadith, not just any hadith, not just a hadith that is sahih, but a hadith that is mutawatir. It is related by so many companions that there is no possibility of human error. In law, when assessing evidence, the judge sometimes will give a verdict because of what is called the preponderance of the evidence. You know what the scholars will call rajih of the evidence. So scholars will conclude on things based on the overwhelming evidence. So there you will say the preponderance of the evidence. And then there are judgments that are more certain, where scholars will say, or judges will say, beyond all reasonable doubt, this is true and that is false. But then there is the kind of evidence which they say beyond the shadow of doubt, beyond the shadow of doubt. And so what are those things in Islam that are beyond a shadow of doubt? We will still, as human beings, out of humility, say, Wallahu alam, that Allah is all-knowing, Allah knows best. But beyond a shadow of doubt, from all sources of truth, all sources of evidence and proof, this we are sure of without a shadow of doubt. Those are those teachings that belong to ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura. They are those teachings that are explicitly clear, so no controversy about what the Quran or the Hadith mean, and they are certain regarding their authenticity. They come from tawatur or mutawatir, multiple independent witnesses from the Quran or from Hadith that are mutawatir. So those parts of the deen we are certain about and nobody questions. When, however, it comes to other teachings of the deen, that's where you find scholars starting to differ, madhab starting to differ, the schools of thought differing. This scholar says this scholar says that. This verse of the Quran, there's this tafsir of that verse, there's this other tafsir of that verse. This hadith could mean this, could mean that. And if you put this verse and this hadith, you find diversity of meanings coming up. And those are areas of khilaf where scholars have agreed to disagree agreeably, where they have intellectual humility to agree that they are relatively certain that they are true, but with the possibility that they are wrong and that the other opinion may be correct. As Imam Shafi would say, I am certain about my opinion being right, but with the possibility that it is wrong. Just as I am certain the other opinion is wrong, but with the possibility that it could be right. So this certainty comes with a level of humility. So it's not what you call certainty beyond the shadow of doubt. This is where the scholar is saying, I am certain either because I believe it is, beyond reasonable doubt, or beyond, where the majority of the evidence, the preponderance of the evidence. In these areas where scholars differ, we need to learn to accommodate that the straight path is wide enough. The Sirat al-Mustaqim is accommodating. There are those on the right and those on the left, those on the far right and those on the far left of the spectrum of the width of what the Sharia of Islam accommodates. And those are the areas of dhanni, of presumption, levels of speculation, probability, relative truth. I believe this is true, but with the possibility it could be another opinion. Now, it is on these issues that when we have scientific evidence, evidence from the ayah of creation, evidence from the field of medicine, from the field of mathematics, from the field of geography, from the field of agriculture, that is more certain, it is based on experiment, there's greater certainty about it, then that is more authoritative than dhanni evidence. And we see this in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when he asked some of the farmers in Medina, why were they mixing the inflorescence, the flowers of the date palms, male and female? You pluck the ones from the male and you shake them on the female. Today we call that pollination or artificial fertilization. Instead of allowing insect and wind to do it, you go and do it yourself. Remember, the Prophet grew up in Mecca. Mecca was not an agrarian, agricultural area. So they told him, we saw our forefathers doing it. This is how we've always done it. So he told them to stop. And so the word spread around Medina. The Prophet said we should stop. And so people stopped. However, when the harvesting season came, the harvest was low. In other words, this policy that the Prophet made of don't do it, because the reason they gave was basically the reason they've been given for following all sorts of superstitious beliefs. We saw our forefathers doing it. And the Prophet ﷺ said, then stop. However, when greater evidence comes, and it is clear that from a scientific experimental point of view, there is some hidden science behind what was being done. It wasn't superstitious. They may have had good reasons for doing it, but these people didn't know what the reason was. But now it is clear that there is a direct relationship, a cause and effect, regression relationship between the activities of the So it was clear that there was a clear relationship between the activities of the farmers and the problems, and the harvest that was being realized. And when that happened, and the people came and complained to the Prophet said, "Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum." And in one narration, what that means is, you are more knowledgeable, or you should be more knowledgeable about these your worldly affairs. These ayat of creation, you the agriculturalists would know better about that. Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum. You know best in this your specialized field of agriculture. And in one narration it says, Antum a'lamu bi umuri dinakum wa ana a'lamu bid-din. And I am more knowledgeable about revelation. So on those areas where there's clear conflict between dhanni, what there's speculation about, that is not qat'i, clear, undisputed revelation, the qaida we have is al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak, that certainty is not overruled by doubt. And this is very important. It is important when somebody says Islam says something and it conflicts with science, or it conflicts with reasoning, it conflicts with clear facts of history. Let us look carefully at what is coming in the name of Islam. Is it really Quran and Sunnah ma'loom min ad-din bid-darura, or is it dhanni, or is it somebody's ijtihad based on his own urf? Because fatwas in usulul fiqh can be made based on urf, based on custom, based on public interest, maslaha of a particular context. And so it is always important to ensure that we always go with where there is greater evidence, greater certainty when it comes to rulings. On the subject of critical thinking tools I would like to emphasize here that what we have in many fatwa councils, in Islamic finance, in many areas, in Islamic medical health professional fatwa councils, is they try to ensure that all the people with all the critical thinking tools are available. The medical professionals, the public health professionals, the fiqh professionals, the usul professionals, those scholars of hadith, those scholars, everybody is at the table. So on this subject area, scholars have put together a list of what we would call critical thinking tools that I would like to read out. Some of what I've said, I hope, acts as a critical thinking tool, that where you see conflict between what you are certain about and what you are less certain about, investigate first. And based on that, you always go with the position of greater certainty. And the things that most scientists will tell you, there's nothing in science that is 100% certain. Why? Because so long as there is still knowledge to learn, there's the possibility the position will change. That every conclusion on science, probably with the exception of very few, I think we have nearly incontrovertible evidence, certain evidence that the world or the globe is round, that we live on a planet number 3 from the sun, that this, that. There are some things I think science has reached a level of conclusion over, and we have not seen differences of opinions among the ulama of those ayat of creation. But most of scientific teachings will still be tentative. Why? Because so long as there's still research to be conducted, so long as new knowledge can come that will change our opinions, then we are as sure of the scientific truths we have today as people 100 years ago were sure of the scientific truths of their days. And people were sure 200 years ago, 500 years ago, of the scientific truths they had before them. And in the next 100 years, in the next 500 years, most likely, the scientists in the next 200 to 500 years would probably be laughing about our scientific certainty as scholars, as we laugh about scientists 200 years ago. Actually, with the rate of change, we shouldn't be surprised that our children will be laughing at the sciences of their parents, not 100 years ago. But the field has more to learn. So long as a verse of the Quran is dealing with the natural sciences or the social sciences or the physical sciences, and Allah tells us to study these areas, then you will find every generation producing new tafasir, new commentaries on this verse in the light of the ayat of creation that are being studied. And it sheds more light, and we see greater insight in the ayat of revelation. And so the two will continue to remain complementary. But based on the teachings of the Quran, of the Sunnah, scholars have come up with a set of guidelines to guide our thinking in every aspect of life, not just fiqh. You know, when scholars call certain maxims or teachings, qawaid al-fiqhiyah, maxims of fiqh, literally said a scholar was a faqih, it meant he was a thinker. When you say a scholar was a hafiz, it meant he was a memorizer. So you can have somebody who is a hafiz of the Quran. It means he has memorized the Quran. We can find a scholar who is a hafiz of hadith. He has memorized hadith. It doesn't mean he can expound on it, he can explain it well. But he has got it up here. He's a moving book, he's a moving encyclopedia. He can bring out the verses. So he has the raw material. But you call a person a faqih when he does faqqaha. He thinks, he deliberates, he contemplates. And that is why we call Allah Al-Hakim, we call him the lawgiver, we call him Shari, you know, the lawgiver. But we never call Allah faqih, the thinker. Why? Allah is already all-knowing. It is human beings who think. It is in fiqh. We have schools of fiqh. Why? Because there's diversity of thinking. So in this field of qawaid al-fiqhiyah, we have maxims for thinking, principles to guide thinking, similar to the one we mentioned, look right, look left, and then right again. For those who are in Malaysia, for example. In Nigeria, it would be the other way around, and then left again. In chemistry, they will tell you, you add acid to water, not water to acid. That is a very simple principle that can save your life. That if you have very hot oil and you want to add water, add hot oil to water, not water to hot oil. So we have these maxims. One of them, the scholars say, al-umur bi maqasidiha, that matters are judged according to the purposes that they fulfill. This maxim is derived from numerous verses of the Quran and Hadith, and I would like to recommend, because time will not allow us to go into that detail, but that if anybody is interested in studying more about these maxims, please, a lot of this material is available online or in any book on Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah, or if you just put a search, Islamic legal maxims or the legal maxims of Sharia or of Islamic law. So when we look at the first maxim, it says, al-umur bi maqasidiha, that matters are judged according to the purposes. And this is understood in two ways. One, that a matter will be judged. And when we say a matter, al-umur, it could be an amr, like a command. It could be a thing. It could be a policy. It could be a judge, a decision. It could be an idea. It could be a plan. But that things will be judged and decided upon bimaqasidiha, based on what was the plan, what was the intention, what was the purpose. And this is understood in two ways. In one sense, what was the intention behind the action? What was the intention behind the action? And so when something happens, it is innamal a'mal binniyat. The action will be judged based on the intention. So we will decide whether what you are doing may be rewarded or not, whether it's a crime or not a crime, based on what was the intention. So if the intention, even though somebody died, but because somebody died doesn't make the offense the same. If it was intentional, it is murder. If it was unintentional, then it is manslaughter. It is not treated the same way, even though the final result was the same. But al-umur bi maqasidiha also means that we will judge something based on its maqasid, the objectives that it fulfills. That's the other meaning of maqasid, objectives, the final goal, the aims. That things will be judged based on what they fulfill, what they result in, what they achieve. In other words, we look at the consequences of our actions. And this is really important in everyday life, that you consider the consequences of the things you do. So al-umur bi maqasidiha, that as Muslims, we should always be planning. We should always think of the consequences of our actions. We just don't do things because we are told we should do them. We look at what are they meant to achieve, and are they achieving those things? Do we have laws that were just, but now society has changed and those laws need to be reviewed, reformed, dropped, replaced, substituted? So we need to just always be reviewing our constitution, reviewing our laws, look again at our cultural practices. Are they still good? Are they still serving benefit? The second maxim is al-yaqin la yazulu bishak, that certainty is not overruled by doubt. That we should be evidence seeking in every issue. We should search for evidence. When you hear news, fatabayyanu, go and find out, is it really true? The Prophet said it is enough to make you a liar if you just keep repeating what people say. To look for the evidence for the things we say and the things we do. And this applies not just for scholars, but for every field. Hatu burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin. Allah puts evidence as part of a prerequisite for something to be true, where he asks, bring your evidence if what you say is true. Allah assumes that if what you say is true, there will be evidence, not just because you say it, but the evidence is what makes it true, not who said it. It is only if we have evidence that Allah said something, then we don't argue with Allah. It's a little like when your doctor says something and you know your doctor is the best in that field. Okay, you don't argue with your doctor, you trust your doctor. We trust Allah, the all-knowing. We trust Allah, the all-wise. And so once we are clear that Allah said something, then Sami'na wa ata'na. When we are clear the Prophet said something and it is understood correctly, what is the context? What did he mean? What is my context? Did it apply? Then definitely we follow. But we must be evidence seeking in every field. And we should always go with the stronger evidence. If there are 2 arguments or 3 arguments, and none of them has perfect evidence, we go with the one that is stronger. We go the one that has greater evidence on its side, not more doubt. There will always be doubt in many fields, but we will always be more evidence-centric, evidence-biased, and as much as possible, let's get that evidence empirical. The third maxim states, ad-darar yuzal, that harm must be eliminated. The moment something is harmful, the moment something causes suffering, what we find in the Quran and the Sunnah is nahi anil munkar, remove harm. The moment something is going to create insecurity, we find Allah promising at'amahum min ju'in wa amanahum min khawf, avoiding hunger for Makkah and its inhabitants in li'ilafi Quraysh, and fear, insecurity. So by looking at the maqasid of Sharia, the objectives of Sharia, it is clear to scholars that if something causes harm, it should be removed. Poverty, anything, ill health, sickness, inefficiency, poor systems, corruption in any form, we should find ways in all our fields. And that is why all the subjects you study, whether it's agriculture or in engineering, whether it's sociology, whatever field you are studying that allows you to understand the ayat of creation better and work with the ayah of revelation and help community, these subjects are either fardu kifaya or fardu ain. Many of them are obligations. If we didn't have people in your field, some human beings will suffer. Before the last one, the other maxim is al-mashakka tajlibu taysir. Al-mashakka tajlibu taysir. That hardship calls for facilitation. Difficulty calls for ease. That when you see people in difficulty, show rahmah. The fatwa that you will give a healthy person and you say, don't drink anything that has alcohol in it, even 1 drop of alcohol, that is not the fatwa that goes to a sick person and the only medication contains alcohol. That is not the fatwa you give a woman who is afraid of breast cancer and a doctor, a male doctor, needs to diagnose her. It doesn't say she has breast cancer. She's not in darura. She may be in haja. She may just be afraid and will need to, etc. So the moment people are in difficulty, what we find is rahmah in the laws. That the moment, in fact, Caliph Umar relaxed hudud punishments, not because anybody was dying, but because there was hunger. People were going to be punished for stealing, and most of those people were going to be poor people unless he put a moratorium, has suspended the hudud for theft. And we find similar things in Sharia, women in their menstruation being absolved from fasting and prayer, and people traveling allowed to combine prayers and defer prayers to various timings. We see the rahmah that Allah puts in even acts of worship between us and Him. And lastly, of these 5 universal maqasid is al-ada muhakkama. Al-ada muhakkama. That people's custom has the weight of law, has the backing of Sharia. When in Sunnah of the Prophet, Sunnah is usually explained as what the Prophet said. what the Prophet did and what he approved of. In other words, even what he approved of is categorized under Sunnah. But if you look at what did the Prophet approve of in Mecca and Medina, there were a lot of customary practices that he approved of. So based on this, scholars realized that the teachings of Islam are meant to have a minimal interference with people's customs, so long as those customs are not conflicting with the objectives of Sharia. If they are bringing benefit, then we respect Malaysian type of dressing and Nigerian type of dressing and Western type of dressing and food and literature and entertainment. Everything is halal except what is haram. And Allah has created us into nations and tribes, lita'arafu, that we should know one another. Not for them to know you only, but for them to know you and you to know them. And that's where a lot of creativity and new ideas come. Why do Nigerians go to study in Malaysia? Because we will learn what we wouldn't have learned here. Why do people from one country go to other countries to learn? Because they will learn things that they don't. Why does one civilization benefit from another civilization? Because that's how we grow. Allama bil qalam, allama al insana ma lam ya'lam. Allah taught human beings by the pen, taught mankind, not just Muslims, taught mankind things that others didn't know. And that's how the legacy of one civilization moved to the next and the next and the next, and it's with us today. And it is with humility and curiosity and respect for cultural diversity that greatest innovation and creativity takes place. It is when people in one field become multi-talented, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, that they study from other fields, that they become more creative in their own fields. And this is so respected by scholars, that the respect of people's customs, that we shouldn't have cultures becoming predatory. We shouldn't allow Western, Arab, Pakistani, Hausa, Yoruba, Malay, any culture to destroy others, because every language is part of the ayat. All this diversity is something that's a gift from Allah. And just as we have gene pools, genetic pools that allow people to look at genes and study them better, so also every culture has wisdom that has been passed on to them from the prophets that Allah sent to those people in the past. Remember, Allah tells us, to every nation He has sent prophets. And some of those prophets were not called prophets. They were just called wise people. So if you look at a prophet like Yusuf, for example, and what he did to food security challenges in Egypt during his time, people of Egypt probably would not have known that there was a prophet with them. And Allah tells us He has sent prophets to all of humanity. In some narrations, it says Allah sent up to 124,000 prophets. In some, up to 240,000 prophets. Allah knows best how many He sent. However, it is the scholars of those environments, the disciples of those prophets, that pass the knowledge down. Ulama are the warathatul anbiya. In every community, these people passed on their knowledge. Some got corrupted, some stayed the same, but the Quran is described as muhaiminan musaddiqan lima bayna yadayhi. That when it comes to revelation, we know what is true in others by looking at what Allah has given us that we are certain about, because the Quran has been more faithfully preserved by Allah through human agency than any other revelation. So to conclude, there are many critical thinking tools to recognize the difference between hukum and fatwa and how fatwas change. This is very critical. And we've seen this in COVID context of differing fatwas for different places. It is important for us to recognize the different specialization of scholars and why a scholar of hadith is not necessarily a scholar of fiqh, and a scholar of tafsir is not necessarily a scholar of another field of Islamic jurisprudence. To respect specializations in the fields as the Prophet said, Antuma alamu bi umuri diniyakum. Don't come studying Islam with an inferiority complex, as if because you have a master's and a PhD, it's equal to nothing. No, you have a lot to contribute from your own field of specialization. Let us remember, we have primary sources of Sharia, but we have secondary sources of Sharia. And many of the secondary sources of Sharia are speculative. They are open to reinterpretation, and we've got differing opinions on these. That we understand that text without context is pretext. That if you read a verse of the Quran or you read a hadith and you don't study the context of it, then you will come with your own assumptions and most likely misinterpret. That we recognize that the maqasid of Sharia, and I would encourage us to read more on these, the maqasid of Sharia, protection of deen, the protection of life and its enhancement of human dignity, of family, of intellect, of wealth and property, of justice, of compassion, of freedom, etc., that these are backed up by the Quran and the Sunnah and the practice of the Prophet and his Sahaba. So both the Qawaid al-Fiqhiyah and the Maqasid of Sharia are based on clear texts. They give us evidence that is near certain because it is still our interpretation, even though there's consensus about it. And we should remember, and I would make this my last point, that the need to triangulate. In research, in any field of geography, of maths, of sociology, when you want to investigate, you will use questionnaires, use focus group discussion, you will do online search, you will do literature surveys. You don't get to the truth through one channel. You triangulate. You use different methods of assessing the same truth. That helps you know how much evidence there is or how weak the argument is. And so as you move through life and you navigate Islam, please look at every issue from the perspective of the evidence. That is the usul al-fiqh type of lens or filter. What is the evidence for it? Look at the same thing from the qawaid al-fiqhiyah point of view, where you look at the spirit of Sharia. But look at it and the maxims. But look at it also from the maqasid point of view, a values-oriented way of looking at things. What benefit is it bringing? What harm is it bringing? Because the moment it is going to conflict with justice, with mercy, with wisdom, with benefit, then it doesn't belong to the Sharia. And I will end with a quotation from Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, where he said, Sharia is all about welfare of human beings in this world and in the hereafter. In its entirety, Ibn Qayyim says, it's about justice, mercy, wisdom, and benefit. I repeat those four: justice, mercy, wisdom, and benefit. Any ruling, Ibn Qayyim goes on to say, that moves from justice to injustice, mercy to its opposite, wisdom to folly, and benefit to harm or corruption, any ruling, any idea, we would put it that way, that moves from justice to injustice, from mercy to its opposite, cruelty or harm, from benefit to corruption, from wisdom to folly, any ruling that moves in the opposite direction of the maqasid, Ibn Qayyim says, is a ruling that does not belong to Sharia, irrespective of if somebody claims it's according to some interpretation. So I pray that at the end of this, we are more confident about our fields, that we have acquired some tools and hopefully know where to get more tools to think critically about life's decisions, the ideas that come our way as we navigate the decisions in life and as we navigate the various positions of scholars. But as always, we keep saying Allahu Alam, that we recognize the need for intellectual humility. However knowledgeable you are, have the belief that somebody out there, in fact, many people, and definitely the next generation, knows a lot more about that subject than you. Where I've made mistakes, I pray Allah to forgive me. I thank you for your patience. I ask for your forgiveness for having taken more time than I was allotted. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa
Good. So, really, uh, the guest speaker actually have spoken at length, which makes it very difficult for us to give the normal summary that we usually give at the end of the lecture. But nevertheless, we will try to give a short summary. And I have indicated in the question section that if you have question, indicate your name, or you can type your question and we will come and read them, inshallah. And first of all, I will start with what the guest speaker started by stating. He mentioned one thing. Well, to summarize it, the topic is critical thinking tools for Muslims. So, what is this critical thinking tool? If we look at it from the books of fiqh we have where it says وَلَا يَحِلُّ لِأَحَدٍ أَنْ يَفْعَلَ فِعْلًا حَتَّى يَعْلَمُ حُكْمَ اللَّهِ فِيهِ, that it is not permissible for any individual to do any act unless he knows what are the hukums of Allah in that thing. That is the main thing. What is that? We have to do is critical thinking. And in this critical thinking, we have the tools for this critical thinking. This is what the lecturer tries to take us through. And he started by saying, whoever embarks on the path of knowledge, Allah makes Jannah easy for that person. And then there is the need for orderly way of doing things as seen in the mathematics so as to help us navigate in life smoothly. And he went further to mention that ideas and managing it is very critical in life and determines a lot of things that we find ourselves in. And nearly half of the pages of the Quran, about 332 pages in the Quran, contains questions being asked and being responded to. The gift of reasoning is to help us appreciate the message of the Quran better. And that is why we say Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam embarked on logical questioning to know God better, and this is something carried down to us in order to learn from it. And then he went further to say Allah gives the angel the opportunity to ask questions in order to satisfy their curiosity, and these are part of the freedom Allah has given to us as well to ask questions. Allah expects us to use our reasoning to ask good and useful questions. The fault is not asking question when it matters, especially if not doing so affects your faith negatively. So ask questions that are relevant, that are critical in satisfying your own curiosity. And he went further to mention the relationship between reason and revelation is like the eyes and the light. Both are gifts from Allah that are expected to guide us through our lives. And he mentioned that there are areas of opinions of scholars that have the probability of being wrong, and in the face of more concrete and greater evidence against them, then they can reliably be ignored in favor of more certain knowledge and evidence. This is one important takeaway lesson that we should take. And certainty is not overruled with doubtful matters, and actions are judged by its intention. Things can also be judged based on what they result into. And then he said we should be evidence seeking in things. When you hear a news, investigate it before spreading it. So these are the major things. And in terms of the normal thinking, critical thinking, most especially in Tawheed and the sign of God, we have what we call tadabbur, judge the idea. Tafqih, analyzing, you should have that mental ability to analyze things. And then you should be able to do tafakkur, prediction of what the possible outcome could be, and we have ta'qil, synthesizing it, and tadhakkur, summarizing it. These are part of the critical thinking tools, and that is why he also mentioned times with a odd number. There is a verse he mentioned, أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. Then do they not reflect upon the Quran? If it had been from other than Allah, they would have found it with much contradiction. And he kept mentioning this, قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرُوا كيف بدأ الخلق. Like you should travel in earth, then look how we began the creation in itself. It is important for us. We have traveled, we have come to Malaysia. Isiru fil ard, we have traveled down the earth. We should not enclose ourselves to University Putra Malaysia. He mentioned about KLCC, which is one of the landmarks here in Malaysia. But unfortunately, a lot of PhD students come here, spend 3-4 years. They have never been to KLCC. It is part of the things, creation, that even though it's man-made creation, but we have traveled down the earth. We shall see new things, new ideas. It helps in giving us the ability to have problem-solving skills in our daily lives. So we should not be myopic in saying we are here to study, not to enjoy, and then all the things that are necessary in improving our thinking, we should not do them. It is important even in the refreshing. And he made mention with a lot of things, and he mentioned سيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. Like there are a lot of things that he mentioned, and towards the end of the lecture he mentioned things that are important, most especially in terms of the rulings of fiqh. When someone is fully agile and someone is sick, there are some rulings, because the rulings are based on rahmah. And he made mention of this clearly, and he talked about maqasid al-shari'iyya, the hifz al-din, hifz al-nafs, and nasl, aql, and mal. These are the things that the maqasid al-shari'iyya is focused on protecting. So these are the 5 things, at least in this lecture you should know, that the protection of faith, the deen, the protection of life, the protection of lineage, protection of the intellect, and mal. You should at least, these 5 things, you should save them. They are the maqasid of Sharia. The most of the things are based on this, and most of the rulings of fiqh are based on these things. So with this short summary, we will go to the question section, and then we will try to see the questions being presented, and we will ask them, inshallah. So I think I saw there is only one question. With the case of study of logical and illogical questioning you cited earlier on from the Quran about the place intellectual curiosity, my question is there a limit to how we can exercise our intellectual curiosity in our deen in the modern age of multicultural diversity?
Okay. That's all for now?
This
We'll
is
start
just
with
one
that one.
question. Others are typing, inshallah.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I think the maxim we mentioned before, al-yaqin la yazulu bi-shak. Whatever question you're going to ask, if we look at the range of questions that are asked in the Quran and the kind of topics that scholars have gone into, if you look at the kind of questions that are asked in the field of Tawheed, of Aqidah, and the whole subject of Kalam, whether to understand it better or whether to defend the Aqidah from atheists. Scholars have asked tremendous questions. In fact, when a particular scholar used reasoning and was believed to have gone astray using poor logic, bad reasoning, what happened was other scholars used superior reasoning, superior logic to guide that other scholar back. So when people used logic and reasoning in a bad way, what we find is, when people say, oh, we follow our forefathers, that's their logic. Allah uses superior logic to let them ask, well, if your fathers were wrong, would you also continue following them? Like, is that a good reasoning? Is that a good line of reasoning? So what we find is we have not yet seen reason conflicting with revelation unless one of them has been misunderstood. Either the reasoning is insufficient, is lacking, that the revelation is correct, and the reasoning is the problem. Science has not yet unearthed the truth. Science is still growing, or depending on the field. Or the other way around, that people look at the revelation again and see, have we made a mistake in our interpretation? In other words, in the use of reasoning to understand the revelation, have we interpreted a particular word to mean something? So a common example is scholars saying, when Allah says he knows what is wafil arham, what is in the wombs, they concluded, therefore, that only Allah knows whether the child is male or female. When science, however, could come and find out through sonar,
ultrasound,
detection, and they were able to detect whether it's a male or female, some said, here's a conflict. Science is able to tell you it's male or female, and there is no doubt on the side of the science that in this particular case, the science is correct and your interpretation of the revelation is wrong. So what Muslim scholars had to do is, did the Quran or the Sunnah actually say only Allah knows the gender of the fetus? And that is when they realized, no, that is their own interpolation. That's their own addition. The Quran just says it is Allah who knows what is inside. It didn't say, is it the nature of the person? Is it the destiny of the person? Is it what that person is going to do? Is it the kind of behavior? Is it the kind of faith? Is it? Allah did not specify what. So you can't say there's a conflict between science and religion. No, there's a conflict between science and somebody's interpretation. So back to the question, what are the limits on how we exercise curiosity, intellectual curiosity in deen, especially in a multi-religious and diverse and multicultural pluralistic society? I think we would have to use our reasoning. Why? Because people are using their reasoning to undermine the deen, to question the deen. You would have to come up with better arguments to defend it. And we find this as the tradition of scholars throughout Islamic history, defending the deen. Abu Hanifa, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hazm, so many scholars in various fields defending the deen using superior reasoning. And that's why Islamic legal philosophy was very critical. What is important, however, is to recognize the limits of reasoning. And that's why in the field of science, in the field of philosophy, there's that recognition that this is what our reasoning has arrived at for now. So it's all still tentative. So even science and philosophy will say it is still tentative. So for us, al-yaqin la yazulu bi-shak, certainty is not overruled by doubt. If we are certain about those ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura, and the evidence for that has been packing over the centuries, we have no reason to doubt those. So if something conflicts with those, then we go with superior evidence. But I would like to say, remember, reasoning improves with knowledge. Reasoning improves with knowledge. So whatever type of logic somebody wants to bring, it is restricted by how much knowledge that person has. What is critical for us Muslims is, let us at least have what the Quran says on a particular issue, and reasoning can play a role. So long as the reasoning doesn't conflict with what is clearly established by reasoning, are set on reasoning by reasoning itself. Allahu Alam.
And the second question is, looking at how Islam respects certain cultural customs, as Muslim, is it okay to hold dear to certain world views and paradigms, to how we seek knowledge about our world, like constructivism, feminism, idealism, realism, etc.? Is it Islamic? That's the question.
Okay. One of the qawaid of fiqh states that that what Sharia goes with al-asl al-asl fil uqud neko lil maqasid wal ma'ani la lil alfaz wal mabani. That al-asl fil al-ibra, sorry, also, that the main point that Sharia, the foundational assumption of Sharia, when it comes to opinions, when it comes to issues, and that may apply to agreements, it may apply to concepts, is the maqasid and the ma'ani. It's what is the objective and what is its real meaning. La lil alfaz wal mabani, not in the wording or the phrasing. So when you pick a word like constructivism or relativism or feminism or idealism or realism, in what area? Let's take a common one like feminism. What does feminism mean? Because there are many forms of feminism, and there are many groups that would describe themselves as feminists, but they don't agree. It's a little like, even when you say, I'm a Muslim, yes, that means that we agree on certain things, but we disagree on many other issues. Why? Because yes, you're Muslim, but you are Shafi on this issue, and a Maliki, or you are this, or you are that, and the diversity within. Yes, we all pray in the same Kaaba in Hajj, but this person is Zaidi, and this person is a Ja'fari Shia, and this person is a Sunni. So yes, we are Muslims, but we still differ. And so when it comes to worldviews and paradigms on how to seek for knowledge, and we look through various lenses, most of feminism is looking through women's rights. Now, part of the objective of Sharia is hifdhul ird, the protection of dignity. Then when Allah said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, and we honored the children of Adam, excuse me, it's Allah honoring men and women, not just men. But in some societies, women have been trampled. They can't vote. Here in Nigeria, just 2 years ago, was when a case went to court, so that in the customary law, especially among the Igbos, customary law in Igbos, they wanted it to be changed so that a woman, a girl, can inherit from her father. We're talking of the year 2018. Finally, it has come into law. There's still opposition, but we're talking about 21st century. In some places, women, girls cannot inherit from their fathers, from their parents. That women who are widows are inherited as property by their brothers-in-law. That this is 21st century. So when women in those environments start wanting more recognition for their own dignity as human beings, for their own rights to inheritance, we fully accept that. The question is, what else is coming in the name of feminism? What else is coming in the name of idealism and realism and constructivism and relativism and all the other isms that we find in political science, in social science, in the sociological humanities, etc. Again, even in some of the pure sciences, we find the philosophy of science. In some areas, we may accept this aspect, when it comes to something and not this aspect when it comes to another. So I am not very comfortable with even the word Islamic, because Islamic simply just means it is halal. When it comes to Islam, the Quran and Sunnah doesn't divide things into two, Islamic and un-Islamic. No, there's a range. There are things that are fard, there are things that are mustahab, there are things that are mubah, things that are makruh, and things that are haram. So when it comes to judging anything, it is sometimes I find more productive, instead of saying, is this Islamic or is it not? You kind of wait a minute, let's narrow it down. What's the particular thing? If somebody says Malay culture or Western culture or Hausa culture or Nupe culture or Indian culture, is it Islamic or not? You have to say, wait, which aspect of it? Are you talking of their traditional dress or their traditional food or how they organize their weddings or how they have laws that Islam respects because it is cultural and it's not harmful? So when you say what is Islamic dress, for example, well, Malay dressing, cultural Islamic dressing is Islamic, but so is Pakistani, and so is Hausa and Yoruba, and so is Iranian and Saudi, and so is this and so is that. So I think the difficulty in answering the question with, is this Islamic or not? There are some aspects that Islam would accept. There are some aspects that Islam would not accept. So it's, I think when one becomes more specific, what exactly is the issue, then it becomes easier to apply maxims like al-umur bi-makasiriha, and we look at that particular issue under feminism or that particular aspect of constructivism, that particular aspect under some area. I hope I've not just complicated the question.
Yes, Alhamdulillah. Just to remind the audience here that the guest speaker mentioned that the Islamic fiqh give a lot of respect and backing for our cultural norms and everything. The rulings in the Islamic fiqh, it just have little interference. Like he made mention, like only in areas where the things prove to be like not is not halal or is haram, then that is when the Sharia will dive into like say, okay, this is not okay from a culture, but everything is okay as he has mentioned earlier on. And here there is a question from a brother Shams from UK, and he said, what should really drive our critical thinking process, and how should this drive help us respond to contemporary and future issues?
I think number one, it is to study the fields that are relevant. As we said in the beginning, to study the sciences of religion, but also the sciences of creation. In other words, when you face a contemporary issue, in Nigeria, for example, a topic that is coming up more and more is this question of rape. And what is the punishment for rape? Now, rape is not a contemporary issue, but because using qiyas, reasoning by analogy, some scholars concluded that rape was similar to zina. They then concluded that the evidence for zina, for witnesses, is what should be brought for rape. But this is the product of qiyas. It's not that that's what the Quran said or that's what the Sunnah said. This is reasoning by analogy. Other scholars used another kind of reasoning by analogy and said rape is similar to hiraba. In other words, to a violent crime like armed robbery or forced entry. And therefore said the punishment for rape can be imprisonment, can be death sentence, and all that goes under that group of crimes called hiraba. And the judge decides what's the most appropriate. So when we find contemporary issues coming, we should be able to look at our past. What is it based on? If it is qiyas, in view of newer knowledge, when qiyas was being done on this subject, there wasn't such thing as forensic evidence. Scholars who were talking 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500, 700, 1,000 years ago, didn't have the forensic science that actually, with a drop of your blood or a drop of your semen or your fingerprint or just a piece of dry skin on somebody's clothes can help us identify you with a level of certainty that was even more reliable than even an eyewitness. Like eyewitnesses could fake who they saw. You could say, you could lie. But the DNA, that is not lying. Nobody else in the environment has your own genetic fingerprint. So what we need to do is get Muslims and who are accustomed and know the particular subject that we are dealing with, that we are calling contemporary, who are also grounded in usul, qawaid, and maqasid, who know the Islamic rulings and what exactly is it based on. Because while some rulings like the prohibition of alcohol consumption, the prohibition of zina, the prohibition of injustice, the prohibition of lying, these are part of ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura. We don't argue about them. The evidence is too clear. But there are many other positions that have been open to ijtihad because of the level of dhanni, the level of speculation in the evidence or in the use of evidence. It went through ijtihad. And as the scholars say, لا ينكر تغيير الفتوى بتغيير الزمان or تغيير الحكم بتغيير الزمان. That there is no denying that fatwas and hukums and rulings and verdicts will change as times and contexts change. As we see that between the time of the Prophet and the time of Umar, how many fatwas changed. Between Imam Shafi in Baghdad and Imam Shafi in Egypt, fatwas changing. So we've seen this throughout our history. And as things change more rapidly in a more rapidly changing world, I think we will find that the tools of maqasid and qawaid al-fiqhiyah are going to become more important in detecting need for change in fatwa. But the home of fatwa construction will always be going back to Quran, going back to Sunnah and the methodology of usul. But now we are going to see a more important role being played by the field of qawaid, fiqhiyah, maqasid, sharia, and the sciences and the experts in the sciences who can tell us the consequences of fatwas, because consequences matter even in qawaid, even in usul, and even in the maqasid. Wallahu alam.
I mean, and to sum it up, part of the contemporary issues that requires fatwa in the modern day time, part of the COVID-19, our brothers still seem not to agree with the issue of social distancing and the fatwa. And from the side talks, you will hear a lot of people giving their own views as to their own disagreement to the fatwas given by the scholars, considering the contemporary challenge we are facing. So, can you shed more light on how this, how people should tend to accept new fatwas in the face of this contemporary challenges we are facing, because things change with the context of and time of the things that happened.
I think it is important that we always respect that maxim, al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak. We've mentioned it before. Certainty is not overruled by doubt. And what this maxim is basically saying is, where some evidence is more certain than another evidence, yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak doesn't mean that every evidence is yaqeen versus shak. No, what it means is that where there is more yaqeen, where there is greater certainty, we go with that in favor of what there is less certainty or what there's greater doubt over. So before we get emotional on any topic, whether it is finance, whether it is family, whether it is COVID, any topic, we ask ourselves, before COVID-19 came along, before we started getting frustrated with new fatwas we have never seen before. You look in Islamic history, social distancing, we had laws on quarantine. That was not new. We have that from the hadith. We had people staying at home because of bad weather and war and insecurity. But we didn't see no shaking hands. We didn't see using hand sanitizers. We didn't see laws about no more traveling, air travel and all of that. We had some of those to do with the quarantining issues, of course, some of those, but we didn't see things about burying the dead in a particular way or not bathing the dead, etc. So before these issues came up, we need to ask ourselves, which subject matter is this COVID-19? Who are the experts? and the experts are the epidemiologists, the experts on epidemics or pandemics when it goes beyond just a smaller region. So who are the experts when it comes to healthcare issues? Who are the experts when it comes to public health? Even before COVID-19, if somebody gave you your medical test results, you don't even know how to read it. You don't know whether you have malaria or typhoid, or whether your malaria is severe or not severe. So what do? We do فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We go and ask the experts, the medical doctors. You don't go to a dentist. You don't go to somebody who doesn't know that area. No, we go to the experts. The question is, why? Because that is the فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ ذِكْرٍ كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Those are the scholars that are the ulul amr, the leaders of that particular field, of that particular area. Just as economists have and should have the greatest say on economic policy, medical professionals should have the expertise in that area. Industrial pharmacists will tell us the medicines we need, and lawyers will tell us, and legislators will tell us on issues to do with laws and policy. Police will tell us on issues to do, and the Secret Service will tell us on issues to do with security issues, etc. So when it comes to an epidemic like a pandemic, this is not the field. Even malaria is not the field of the alim and the ulama. The ulama should be humble enough, and we who are the students of the ulama should have the humility to know the limits of the specializations of our scholars. And remember, your scholar may be a mufassir. It doesn't make him a muhaddith. He's a muhaddith, doesn't mean he's a faqih. He's a faqih doesn't mean he is an expert in medicine. And because he's an expert in gynecology doesn't mean he's the best to handle your tooth problem. And just because he's a dentist or a psychiatrist doesn't make him an expert in issues to do with epidemics. The experts on epidemics, the world experts and the national experts are the ones that the NDCC, the National Disease, what is it called?
Control
National
Agency.
Disease Control Center.
National Center for Disease Control.
Center for Disease Control. Thank you very much. The World Health Organizations. These organizations that get the experts to get together. The Quran says, "Shawirhum fil amr." Consult people. The experts consult. This is not just one expert speaking. This is the group of experts speaking and saying we should observe social distancing. We should stop doing the following things, etc. These are the people that our greatest ulama say we should listen to. If that is where the greatest evidence comes, and all you have to ask yourself, if it wasn't COVID and it was something else, who would we listen to? If it wasn't COVID and it was a security issue of getting on planes and you should have the following checks, are we going to be asking our ulama? If it was a medical issue and you needed an operation, are you going to ask your imam in the mosque or somebody? Let us respect specializations and who are the ulul ilm, who are the ahl zikr in each field, and we do what Allah says. Fas'alu ahl zikr. Ask those who know. If we don't, and we have now put somebody else who is not an expert as our authority that people should listen to, and that is the person now we are listening to, we should remember the warning of Allah that whoever puts a person in authority who is not competent, that person has betrayed Allah, betrayed the Prophet, and betrayed the Ummah of Islam. So please let us really not joke, especially, this is not about which football team is a good team. This is not about, some petty issue of no significant consequence. This is an issue of life and death. This is an issue that can undermine the economy or make it flourish. This is an issue where people die, elderly people who we should have rahmah for. The Prophet ﷺ said, he is not of us who has no rahmah, no respect for the elderly, no rahmah for the younger ones. We pray, Rabbi irhamhuma kama rabbayani sagira, for Allah to have rahmah on our elder ones, on our parents. We, the young people, cannot be those who are the channel of making our mosques, centers, and our religion an instrument of spreading death to our older ones. May Allah make it easy for us. Jazakumullah khairan. Wallahu a'lam.
Amin. Jazakallah khairan. We will call on Brother Amir Lamido if he has some contributions to make to close the session, inshallah, as Maghrib is approaching here. Yes, inshallah. Brother Amir Lamido, are you here with us? Okay. I think Brother Amir Lamido, maybe he's already getting ready for Salatul Maghrib. And Brother Raji, I think it's good you give the closing remarks so that we end the session, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah.
Mm.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. We most sincerely appreciate our Sheikh and brother Nuruddin Lemu for this presentation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in his mizan of hasanat, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him abundantly for the time he shared in trying to educate us more on this particular topic, which has to do with critical thinking. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you abundantly. And for the brothers and sisters that have been with us right from the beginning of the program to the end, and those that left, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them abundantly for joining us. With this, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To sum it up, one thing we should take from this lecture is certainty is not overruled with doubtful matters, and science is not usually certain, it's just tentative. So with this, we will say Jazakallah khairan for this very informative lecture. We have really learned a lot, and inshallah, we look forward to to ask you to present on other issues that you have touched partly in this presentation. And with this, we will say, وَلَسَوْفَ يُؤْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. And جزاك الله خيرا. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Jazakallah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Yeah,
Iyakum.
Sheikh.
Jazakumullah
Iyakum.
khair.
Iyakum. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Alaikum
alaikum
salam.
salam.
Maghrib here already.
It's
All right.
Maghrib. Calling the
Yes,
Azan.
Hayya ala
we
salah.
are back. All over now.
Almost time for Salatul Jummah in Nigeria.
Haka ne kuma. All right.
Eh,
Allah ya karɓa mana.
Amin. Amin.
Jazak. Inshallah.
Wa iyakum.